You're listening to another Ambitious Entrepreneur Network.com podcast, the voice for entrepreneurs and small business. Now, onto the show.
Welcome to the Christian Entrepreneurs Podcast, daily conversations with Christian entrepreneurs to inspire and empower Christian business owners to walk strongly in their faith, while build a thriving business that honors Him in every way. Now, over to your host, Anne-Marie Cross.
And welcome to another episode of the Christian Entrepreneurs Podcast. This is episode 73, and I'm your host, Anne-Marie Cross, the podcasting queen. My guest today says God has left His fingerprints around us everywhere for us to discover and guide us into freedom. Joining me on today's show is Christina Mathewson. Christina is a naturopath. She's a herbalist and GAPS practitioner, and GAPS stands for Gut and Psychology Syndrome. She has been in business for 2 years, creating and teaching courses on fermentation and health, as well as seeing clients online all over Australia. Now, on today's show, Christina's going to share that God is the best teacher and director. Trust in Him to lead the way. It's the only way to succeed. She's also going to share how God is bringing the right opportunities to her in her business, and now she's able to step into them. As well as 4 years ago, she was left on life support after the birth of her last, which was her 7th child, and that experience has given her a new drive and a new passion to run the race that she's been called to run in her business, and so much more. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I have not heard of the GAPS before, the Gut and Psychology Syndrome. So really look forward to learning more about that. But just share with us, because one of the things that I'm doing for all of my guests, and I would love to give you the opportunity too. I mean, one of the things you say is trust in Him, lead the way, and that's the only way to succeed. So when you think of your business, what direction, did you always want to become an entrepreneur and run your own business, or was it something that was led to you on a journey that you can now look back and think, yep, all of that was being guided to now create this business? How was that for you?
So mine was kind of the second of what you just said there, in that there was this journey that led to it. I hadn't set out to start my own business or anything like that. It wasn't what I intended for myself. Mm-hmm. But as you would know, God leads you on these journeys that kind of eventuate and blossom into what they are.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's kind of what happened for me.
Yes. And as a naturopath, herbalist, and then GAPS practitioner, was that something that came about because it was things that you had experienced yourself, or that others around you had experienced? You thought, I need to learn more about what's going on here.
Yeah, so it was from my husband's experience, actually. So he had chronic bowel syndrome. So he was in pain a lot. So he would be in so much pain that he wouldn't be able to sleep at night. And then he couldn't function during the day. If you're not sleeping, your brain's not able to function the way that it should. You can't think clearly, and you can't communicate effectively, and you just don't have the patience to be, the person you want to be in your life. Yes. It takes a lot more effort. And so I'd lived with him for probably about 5 years, and we'd had 4 children under 4, and I was like, this can't go on. I've got to do something about this, because I need you here. I need you to be doing the things that you need to be doing with our children and to lead our family. And if you're in constant pain all the time, you can't do that.
No.
So it kind of came about that journey where I went, right, I've had enough. God, I need you to help me. I need you to guide me in the way that I can heal him, and we can get some movement on this. And then kind of, as we walked that journey of healing him, more and more people came alongside and saw what we were doing, and they would ask me, oh, so what are you doing? What's working? What is this big change that's happened for you? Yes. And that would open opportunities for me to share. And, there was this amazing journey of going through that. I remember at one point I was pregnant with baby number 6, and, we'd been on this healing journey, and people kept asking me. And I'm like, I can't just message back and spend all my time messaging back just one person at a time. Yeah. So we had this double garage, and I just opened up my double garage and invited people to come in and listen to me talk about what we were doing. And, you know, I actually had no seated room left. We'd put out 30 chairs. Wow. And there were still people standing at the back of my garage waiting to listen to what I was going to share about this healing journey and how this food can be our medicine that God has provided for us to nourish our systems and heal us and keep us on track.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting about that, which interesting, and then it's almost very sad too, is that there's so many people that are struggling with this and that they have no idea how to address it, how to treat it, how to heal it. Because as we know, our bodies are incredible, that give it the right environment, it can heal itself. Yet, you know, on the opposite, when you're not giving it the right food, the right nourishment, and it's struggling, it can do the opposite and cause us pain. So now, how is your husband now?
He's doing well. You know, he had psoriasis, like he'd had psoriasis his whole life. And literally, like when we got married, his mother pretty much handed me over his psoriasis cream. Yeah, that he would have to have for the rest of his life. And, you know, me being the rebellious person that I went, no, we're getting rid of that. And we've totally cleared his psoriasis. It's been gone for 7 years. It's never come back. And, you know, if you go to much of the traditional treatments that are available at the moment, they'll often say to you that you can't fix it. Yeah. And I'm like, no, there's living proof that God can help fix it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And thank goodness for, you know, your rebellious approach in that way, because had you not had that, you would never have found out the information that you do now and that you are sharing with others. Now, share more about God is the best teacher and director. Trust him and to lead the way, and that's the only way to succeed, certainly in the story and the journey that you've just shared. But share some of the, maybe even some of the moments that you reflect back on and you think, my goodness, if it weren't for his intervention or the information that I got, you know, that was put in front of me, what are some of the more significant times that you really can recall?
For me, I always find that God is definitely there leading me in the way, especially when it comes to working with my patients. Like 9 times out of 10, I will come across something and I want to study it and get really deep into it. And it'll be, you know, 2 seconds later or a week later, and someone will turn up and they'll need that exact information that I've just been pouring into myself and figuring out. That's exactly what they need for that time. And I just am so thankful that God uses me in that way to be able to pass on that information that they needed in a condensed way that they can use. Yeah. But the whole journey for me has really just been a lot of God moments of God, you know, taking me from one step to the other and using some of my rebellion, like I mentioned about my rebellious streak. So I wasn't ever intending to go and be a naturopath or anything like that. But I actually had a friend who I had been on this journey with Healing Ben and, you know, sharing this message and so on. And she decided that she was going to go and be a naturopath. And I'm like, no. I'm the one doing all this work. So that's what actually made me step up and take my study. My competitive streak and rebellious attitude kind of made me step up and take that leap that God had really just been pushing on and pushing on and pushing on for that period of time.
Yeah. Isn't it incredible how, you know, each of his children, which is us, of course, have got different traits and different characteristics, and he knows what pushes our buttons, you know, and there can be the gentle, come on, and often we don't take up the mantle, if you will, to do that till something happens and we go, right, enough is enough, you know, whatever kind of fires us up that way, which is really fantastic. So now, of course, when you're thinking about opportunities that come for you, and I'd love you to speak about this, because some of the things that I'm hearing, and I know that has happened to me too, that sometimes we can try our hardest, we can go into action, we can do all of this, and then it's not till we actually sit back and we do lean in and we do pray that all of a sudden these things happen and we think, I really didn't have much to do with that at all. And often it's that lesson, isn't it, to say that we're not really in control. Yeah. When we surrender and allow him to really come in, that's when things really can shift and move. Have you had that experience too?
Exactly. That's exactly how I've experienced it. You know, when I finally stepped up and said, right, I'm going to go into business and I'm going to do this and start creating an income for my family for the time that I'm spending with people. And, you know, I tried to push and push and push, and there was just not a lot that I could do. You know, I could, you know, market myself and I could do all of that action, but it just wasn't the right time. It was really, when I was talking to God, it was a season of really me just seeding and planting. And, you know, I wanted to be at the reaping and side of it, but it wasn't that time for me. Yes. And I finally stepped back and I go, okay, God, you just need to lead the way. You need to let people who need to be in contact with me, lead them to me. And, you know, I'm just going to surrender it to you because it's your work anyway.
Yeah.
And when I have done that exact thing, that is when, you know, I think this last month I've got 4 different appointments booked in that were from other practitioners that have seen me in the world of, you know, gut health and have, you know, suggested that people come and see me. Yeah. And I've not had any contact with them. I've never met them before, those practitioners, but they have just been guided to send those patients to me.
Yeah.
And the same with speaking opportunities. You know, I can push all I like, but it's really God that does the work that actually, you know, connects you with the right people, because when it's not right, it's not right. It's really not right.
It's interesting too, isn't it, when you think about it? You know, often you hear people, wow, that was a real coincidence, or wow, you know, serendipity. But really, you know, from as we know as Christians, there's no such thing as coincidence. That person meeting that person 3 months ago to that person there walking at right that moment in time was there. It was destiny. Yeah. It was just meant to happen. And I think when we start to look at things that way, when we look at things that way, we're reminded of it. We can see just how incredible it is. And I think, and we just had this conversation with someone today, I think two guests ago, and when we realize the power in that, and we have the faith and trust, that's when God even steps it up, if you will, because of the fact that we do see that and we recognize it and we thank him for that, and we, you know, have that faith and trust. Share a little bit about you know, the times where you did take the step back and you realize, you know what, now is not the time. Because I think as entrepreneurs, we can have a vision, we can have you know, goals that we set in our business, but we can sometimes through circumstances have disappointments. And it's in that moment in our decision whether we continue, and sometimes for many we don't, because we don't want to feel that failure. What was it that you say to yourself? What did you do that really had you really continue on and remain focused?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the bigger plan that really kept me focused. You shared briefly before that I was on life support 4 years ago. For me, and again, the story you were just sharing about people stepping in at the exact right moments, that's the only reason I'm still here today. You know, I'm here with my beautiful family because of those God moments of God stepping in and actually taking control and having the right people there when he needed them, because I'd used all of Tasmania's available blood. There was no more left. I had blood flying in from Melbourne and Sydney to keep me alive. My surgeon himself was saying it was like he was just holding me here by the heel of my ankle to keep me earthside. Yeah. And he couldn't have done it because there was so much that went wrong. But it was the elements of people stepping in and being there at the right moments that kept me alive. And that bigger picture, that experience in itself really gave me a good kick up the butt that I needed to knuckle in and just go passionately for what God had put on my heart, because it could be all over in a heartbeat. And that big picture of going hard for what God has given me is what really draws me back to go, okay, is this the season to be moving forward and pushing forward? Or is it the season that you need me to step back and allow you to come in and do stuff? And I want to say to your listeners as well that sometimes as business people, we can get really worried about stepping back. We can go, but I need the finances, I need this and I need that. And, you know, if I step back, I'm going to lose this, 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 and this. But what I want to say is that when I've stepped back from my experience, God has filled the gap. Like, my income doubled when I stepped back. And, you know, he was there. He met my needs.
Yes. Yeah, so true. I think the internet might have frozen. There you are. There you're back again. Good. And it's so true, isn't it? Because, and I think sometimes it is because we've surrendered and we've released that, because when things are going really well, and this can happen all the time. We do think that, hey, that's because I'm going to give myself a pat on the back. Not that we're discrediting. I mean, you know, it's good. We should show thankfulness and gratitude, and you know, do continue to be proud, but not in that arrogance, you know, sense. But I think then when we do try and think that, oh, that is just through my works and what I did, that we're reminded actually it's not at all. I mean, I'm impressed that you're doing this and you've got 7 children. What are the age groups, if you don't mind me?
So currently they're 14 to 4.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
That is certainly certainly things to juggle. And I think what's really brilliant in that, you know, as a business owner, and I'd love you to speak to this, because sometimes there may be, when I say sometimes, there may be people who are listening today that do have children, a family to juggle too. And we realize, you know, there's different seasons in our lives where we do need to really be intentional in the balance and in the way that we are focusing on our family and then giving time for our business and so forth. What have you done that enables you to keep, because if I look back at my journey when my kids were young, I'm going to use this word, not referring to you, but me, to keep yourself sane?
I think, I don't know that I do anything in particular that keeps myself sane, but it's just that this love of what God has put inside my heart to be able to do with people is what keeps me sane, because I just love every aspect of it.
Yes.
So it's not a challenge for me to go and do it. It's not hard in that sense. It's actually a real joy to be able to do that. From our family point of view, we homeschool our children. So they have just come along this whole journey with me. I remember sitting down at the table going, right, sitting there with my school books, and I'm learning about the epithelial layers of cells and stuff. And I'm like, okay, kids, that's what our homeschool is going to be. We're all going to learn about the anatomy of the body.
I have to take my hat off to any family who homeschools, really, and then running a business. Amazing. And I think that is really where you have to be so focused on the task at hand. And what I mean by that is quality time spent with your children, quality time spent on working on your business, rather than being stretched too thin. Have you found that too?
Yeah, definitely. You have to set parameters around yourself.
Yes.
And I think that was probably one of the hardest things for me, because, you know, homeschoolers generally are very free flowing and so on.
Yes.
So I had to be a little bit more strategic about, you know, how I was going to run our homeschool, how I was going to schedule our family time so that we could start our time with devotion and work our way through, and when I could fit in clients and all of that sort of stuff. It's became quite structured, but that structure has given us freedom. In the sense that, you know, we know that we're ticked all of the boxes that we need ticking, and the rest of the time is ours to just enjoy.
Yes. Yeah. Amazing. And so, you know, have you always homeschooled all of your children? Amazing. And to have
so I was a teacher before I homeschooled.
Oh, well, that's fantastic too. I mean, isn't it interesting how, you know, your experience and your skills and strengths that you have can really be applied from previous experiences, can really be applied to situations that that continue on. And let me ask you this, because, you know, I think sometimes as parents who are, you know, we're running a business as well, what we don't realize is that our children can also learn and see in action these incredible entrepreneurial skills, which I think are fantastic, because you're talking about resilience, problem solving, vision, you know, plotting big picture, small picture, all of that. Great skills. Are you seeing some of these developing in your children?
Absolutely. And, you know, exactly that experience for me. As a herbalist, you know, it costs quite a lot to set up your herbs. So I think the starter kit was something like $600. And my children saw me go through this experience of creatively asking God, how can I get the money to pay for that so that I can, you know, do what I need to do and keep moving, because I don't want to have any credit in my business. So I want the money to be able to pay for that. God, you've set me this task. How are we going to do it? And God shows up every time, giving me a creative idea to be able to do those sorts of things. And I'm seeing that as well in my children, where they're starting to think outside of the box. How are there other ways that you can do this?
Yes. Yes. I remember a very creative, well, I don't know if it was so creative, but I would have only been quite small then. And my parents, and I know this is too much information, but had false teeth. They came from Holland. They're a lot older when they adopted me. And I probably was about 2.5, 3, but I had the concept, of the fairy, the tooth fairy. And I was rummaging around the drawers and I found a set of teeth and I thought I saw dollar signs, money cent signs, because my parents never gave a dollar or anything. Anyway, that was my first monetary disappointment because I found nothing under my pillow the next morning. But really, getting back to your, which is kind of aligned with it, you think of ways. How can I create pocket money? Can I put something together? Can I sell it? Can I do a market? And you hear of these stories of these young people now that have been really nurtured in those skills to be able to look at that. And I think now selling things on the internet, the tools that we have now at our fingertips are really
absolutely,
aren't they? That they can certainly even start up their own little mini businesses.
Well, that's kind of part of our homeschoolers. We want them to encourage them to, build their own businesses so that they get that understanding.
Yes, yes. And do what some parents do, get URLs for them and all of that stuff. I was a personal branding strategist for many years, and I recall some of my clients actually, if they had children, naming them, saying, let's see if that URL is available, because they're going to need it later on. Now it's so funny what we do now. What would you say to someone who is feeling challenged in business, because you are obviously in the situation now where you are juggling family, homeschooling as well.
Yeah.
It's so passionate about your business too, and I can really sense you're passionate about all of them. Sometimes we do need to put some, again, different seasons, different stages, and be okay with that. What would you say to someone who is feeling a little bit of stress around that?
I think it's a really hard place to be when you're wanting to push forward into something, but it's not the right season. And it can be a hard place to be, to actually let go as well. I look back at my own journey and I think of the few moments where I was feeling very, very frustrated about what was going on. But at the same time, I knew that in my own strength, I couldn't do anything. And so, if I was to talk to my younger self back then, I would say, go to the beach. Go do something fun and hang out with your family, because you can only do what you can do and God needs to do the rest. And you can't do his part. You just need to allow things to be what they are and be okay with that. And sometimes that can be a really challenging place to be, but your stress doesn't help you get there.
No. And share this too, in some of those instances, or maybe more often than not, when we do that and we surrender and we allow that to, and we just know and trust that he's going to take care of it, then often something will happen. We'll have an insight, or we'll think of something that we think, oh, I never thought of that. Have you had that as well?
Absolutely. I think some of the times when we have those moments, I like to get in a car and just go for a drive, like not necessarily go anywhere in particular, but just go for a drive. For me, that's that moment where God can really just speak to me, because I'm not focusing on anything else. The phone's not there, the computer's not there. You can't do any of that sort of stuff. And it's that moment where God can start to reframe and turn things around, because we look at things from one perspective, but God is looking at it from a completely other perspective, and he's seeing it very, very different. And sometimes we just need to come around to his side and look at it and go, oh, I totally see what you're doing there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the other things that you're saying is, different seasons, and you learn and you're maturing and so forth. And I think, sometimes in those situations we are developing a strength. And I say it again and again because it's so true. And I think sometimes we miss the point, because we're so stuck in the anxiousness. And for some people it's, why am I always struggling with this? Maybe that's because there's a lesson you have not yet learned. And if you do surrender that and ask for that lesson, and you ask, sometimes we don't want to ask because we kind of know what the answer is going to be, but we don't want to. We want to try and winkle our way, for want of another saying, to try and get them to answer in our way. But it's I can see what you're trying to do, but it's not going to work. It's just like, all right. But now looking back, you created that strength that enables you to continue. And you notice things that may have bothered you previously or may have been a real struggle for you, that it's like, you know what, thank you. I now have the strength to be able to cope.
Absolutely. And I would say money is one of those big things for us in the Christian world, because, you know, there's a lot of messages that talk about money being bad. You know, it's the root of all evil. And it's, you know, there's a lot of cliches that are like that. And I think that for me, that was an area that I had to really overcome, because especially in health, you know, I feel like I should be giving it away. I should be making people free and, you know, not asking for anything in return for that. But at the end of the day, my children still need to eat. They still need a house to live in and clothes and all of those sorts of things. But also too, people don't necessarily value that information when I give it to them for free. And I've seen it time and time again that they haven't actually taken it up and walked with it until they've actually paid me money for it. And then that's when they start running free with it. And there's this conflict for me that I had to really walk through, and God kind of really did some work with me and actually saying, you know, as Christians, we shouldn't be afraid of making a lot of money, because, you know, he will always put something on our hearts to give that money to. We're never going to be so abundantly rich that we don't have enough to give away. You know, so there's always aspects that, you know, you give a good person money, they're going to bless a whole bunch of other people with that money. And I think from that Christian point of view, it was quite hard to start with, to accept that people would pay money for what I was doing and that it was okay.
Yeah, so true. And I think, you know, if it's very difficult for us to receive, then we're kind of modeling that for those around us as well. And I think, you know, we start off and know that we're doing his will and using our strengths and our gifts to be able to really help others, and at the same time create an income that we can contribute to kingdom projects and things like that, then we can make an incredible difference.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, there are organizations on the ground in developing countries that need finances.
Exactly.
To build water wells and goodness knows, you know, feed children and clothe them that
exactly.
Otherwise. And so, you know, if we're trying to build and really make an impact in that way through our businesses, yes, inspiring words can certainly impact, but so can, you know, financial contribution.
Exactly. And I can't necessarily fly to some of these places with my family and do that work right now. It's not something that we are able to physically go and do right now, but there are people over there that can do it. Yeah. And if I can financially support them by doing whatever it is that God has put on my heart to do, then I'm working in that bigger picture.
Yes. Absolutely. And not being afraid, because sometimes we do, because it's like, you know, there's a limit that often is said, well, anything above that, that's not good. But it's like anything above that, which organization can we give that to? Or what can we up level? Can you get more team? Can you invest it, whatever it is, so that you can continue to scale and expand your business or employ more people?
Exactly.
So, Christina, share with us, how can people find out more about what you do, and how can they connect with you?
So they can, of course, connect with me on Facebook. You know, I'm Family Health Naturally, Christina Mathewson. And, you know, on my website, which is familyhealthnaturally.com.au. And you can always connect from me either of those two places.
Fantastic. And when I interviewed Ben, I can't recall whether he actually mentioned that he had 7 children. So there you go. Fantastic. And of course, we'll put all of the contact details for you, Christina, on our show notes, which people can access, ambitiousentrepreneurnetwork.com/TCE73. So one of the things that I love to do, and I think we prayed for Ben as well, would just love to pray for you, and we'll finish up the show.
Great.
Fantastic.
Please do.
Father, thank you for the opportunity to speak with Christina today, Lord, you know, to hear her share her testimony, the journey, you know, the ups and also the challenges that you have been there walking alongside her, caring for her, loving her, guiding her. And we thank you for that. We thank you too for the blessings in her family, and of course for Ben, who we've spoken to on the show before. We just ask for your continued blessing on their family as they continue to teach the children in your ways, and and really building in them young children that can certainly love and adore you, and as they continue to grow older, maybe also becoming entrepreneurs and building kingdom businesses. Father, we also want to pray that you'll continue to bless the work that she's doing with her clients. Lord, there are so many people who are struggling with their health, but unfortunately they're not learning the right ways, the things that they should be doing. And we really pray that they will be able to hear this podcast or read an article that she shared, so that finally they really can learn what they need to be able to make different choices and decisions in their lives that will help them to heal themselves as well through eating healthfully and allowing their bodies, which you created, Lord, to do what they have been created to do. Father, we just want to ask for your continued blessings, and we ask this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It has been an absolute delight. I really do take my hat off for you. I had 3 young children growing up at home. I certainly didn't homeschool them. And, for me, sometimes I thought if there was one wish that I would have, it would be just to sit for 5 minutes with silence. There's always one knocking on the door or something like that. So I certainly take my hat off to you and all other people who have got the young ones who are schooling as well and building businesses. So God's continued blessing on you and your family.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on the show. Bye for now.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Christian Entrepreneurs Podcast, brought to you by BeTheDifferenceMovement.com. Changing the world one message at a time. Do you feel called to influence real change with your message? Join our supportive community of like-minded influencers, thought leaders, and disruptors at www.BeTheDifferenceMovement.com. That's BeTheDifferenceMovement.com.